Hello there, I'm Tim and he's John, and this is How to Murder Time, a podcast about games and things.
Hello, everybody.
Which is also a video.
It's also a video, yeah.
I don't care.
You keep forgetting the video.
I know.
I care about the video.
I never watched the video. Well, who watches the video? Do write in and let us know.
Lots of people watch the video.
Actually, we asked if anyone reads the show notes and we got some comments about that, so I'll have to be a bit more careful and less complacent about that sort of thing in future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, let's get on with some stuff.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about Tomb Raider. This is Tomb Raider, typically enough, I'm talking, of course, about Tomb Raider 2013. Is that what it's called? Tomb Raider 2013 in the circles, because people might think I'm talking about the one from like 1984 or something.
I believe it is.
Yes, anyway. So I've been rattling through that. It's been fantastic. Really enjoyable. It's got problems, which I'll come to, but I've really enjoyed the experience. I have, of course, finished it. It is very, very much in the mould of, a carefully plotted narrative adventure of more or less precisely 10 to 12 hours of duration. I can't remember exactly what my playtime on it is, actually, but it's got some token open-worldy bits, but they are pretty small. They certainly don't outstay their welcome, and it is very much about the story. It's very much about the narrative, about getting through. Lara's essentially, it's a survival horror action flick, really, that you're driving in, which is nice, all the technical stuff is recent enough and up to date enough to be relatively impressive for a hick like me. I don't know what modern games look like. That's
a bit better. That's from 2013. That's not even the you're playing the PC one, so it's not even the better looking version.
Oh, the PC isn't the best looking one.
No, because they did a HD versions on the Xbox One and PS4, and they never backported that to the PC.
Okay. So,
not that it really matters.
So yes, essentially it is a sort of origin story for Lara Croft. It's her basically suffering the most horrific archaeological mishap and adventure gone wrong imaginable, off the back of some sort of university field trip, study trip type thing that they all thought was just going to be a bit of like reality TV larks with this sort of semi-celebrity professor guy, and she's come along to help. And there's shipwrecks on the island, and there's all sorts of crazy going on. It's interesting how many different sort of eras and aspects of that setting they managed to pull into the story. You've got the sort of the ancient Japanese court of Yamakai, which is like this ancient Atlantis mythical lost kingdom type thing, and that's all going on. Then of course you've got a whole load of abandoned Japanese bunkers from World War II, which is so there's a whole bit of Nazi super science leanings going on in there as well. Then of course you've got the sort of continual ongoing contemporary shipwrecking thing that goes on and turns into a massive cargo cult type thing as well, and then into that Lara drops as well, and then there's various attempts to rescue which all go wrong, and eventually it's Lara. It's a story of Lara learning to trust her instincts that just keep radioing for help is just going to keep resulting in crashed planes and helicopters, Yeah. And to be honest, I picked up on that before Lara even did, but all the rest of the sort of supporting cast are going, no, we should keep signalling for help, because just because every other plane that comes near this island crashes and burns doesn't mean the next one won't.
Oh, that's a basic rescue plane. That I felt really bad about.
I know. Well, there's a couple I think that get called in, and I think they sort of end up in tragedy and disaster. So, basic scientific process there. Don't keep doing the same thing every time, because the same thing will happen. Anyway, so Lara manages to convince them all to go to the heart of darkness. There's a very Apocalypse Now feel to the whole sort of second half of the game, which is quite pleasing as well, quite interesting. And yes, the inevitable kidnappings, abductions, rescues, and big confrontation on top of a big disintegrating mountaintop fastness is very good as well. It's a little bit quick-timey in places, but not so much that I started to hate it, Yeah. QuickTime can really ruin a game, especially if it's massively over-applied and is unforgiving on the timing, which is neither the case in this game.
It's just very harsh.
There's a couple of bits, well, yeah, if you get it wrong, my God. But there was a couple of bits. The wolf attack in the cave, my God, I took about 8 goes to get through that, just because of the timing of it. And also, I think the UI as well. So some of these QuickTime events have a mash button when the circle contracts to meet this other circle, and I didn't really realise that was what was going on initially. I thought mash button as soon as the big circle appears, and so I just kept consistently getting that wrong over and over until I worked out what the UI was trying to tell me there, because it doesn't really lead you in. I mean, I feel stupid asking for a tutorial for a QuickTime event. It is press button, but it's learning the cues, learning when it's likely to start appearing, and so that you can be ready to be high response reactivity, because you can't be primed to mash X to not die for 10 hours solid.
Have you played The Order?
Well, I don't know. Perhaps some game designers expect that of you, which is wrong, because that kind of hypertension. There needs to be relatively well signposted sections in which you do need to pay attention, and sections where, later on there's bits. Say for example, when she's sort of tumbling down these water slides, and then there's these big barbed wire barricades halfway across the water. Basically the way to do that is you're meant to blow them apart with the shotgun as you come sliding towards them, and the game actually literally slows time down just ahead of when you need to do one of those. So you think, oh, hang on, wake up, need to pay attention now. And also when she's using the axe to slide down the rope, sort of aerial runway style, there are sections later on where you need to drop from one of those onto another rope as you pass, and if you overshoot, you'll die when you hit the far end. And again, time slows down briefly so that you know that something is expected of you. And so you sort of start to pick up that that's what's needed. But yeah, so I don't know, the quick time, it doesn't suffer too badly from boss fight either, which was reassuring. I mean, there was a couple of boss fights here and there. There's like some giant samurai monster thing, one of these onis. And I suppose it might be the culminating boss fight, because the bit after that's a bit more just react and deal with it, rather than the traditional rule of threes boss fight, wait till he's vulnerable, do the thing. It leans in token ways in that direction, but it doesn't consume the game and turn the whole game into a succession of tedious repetition exercises.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, every so often you'll be in a sort of a small arena-like space, and there'll be some super bruiser type who's very well armoured coming towards you, and the way to deal with those is you're meant to let them swing at you and then dodge out of the way, and whilst they're overcompensating, shoot them in the back of the head and stuff. And that's about as boss fighty as it gets. You do that 3 times, and then you have a sort of, then he drops down and there's a skull appears over his head, and you can do a minor quick time thing to actually finish them off. Slightly disruptive, but it didn't ruin the game, and it so had the potential to do that. You see these sorts of mechanics are all over the place in other games where it's just massively overplayed. The game designers feel very smug with themselves that they've come up with a particular mechanic. Look, this is the thing they need to do now, and it's really clever, and it's not. It's just repetition. It's just translated experiences from other games that do broadly the same thing. I can't remember the last time I saw an original boss fight. I'm thinking back to like Thief, the sneak 'em up bosses from the Thief series. I don't know. So it's almost like they felt, well, people are expecting that kind of thing, so we'll throw a bit of it in. But really, what we're trying to do here is deliver an interactive movie, and that's what it really felt like. So that, in a way, yes, you got to the end, saw the cutscene, hurrah, victorious on the boat, rescued off the island. Spoiler. There's not a spoiler because there's another Tomb Raider game. There is.
Yeah, let's play that.
There's a sequel.
Sitting in my library.
Yeah, so... And I got to the end of that and I thought, and it said, well done, 85% completion. So by that they mean I found 85% of the hidden things.
That's not bad, actually.
Well, on the first playthrough. So, and also, don't forget, some of those things you cannot access when you first find them, because they require unlocked equipment abilities that appear later on, and then you're supposed to go back. So I did a little bit of travelling backwards and forwards, but mostly I was just engaged in the story and pushing through, as it delivered it. And I got to that and I thought, okay, so obviously they want me to, they roll end credits, and then boom, they're suddenly Lara's back there in the first open worldy foresty area again with no sort of explanation or context. And I thought, oh, this is the sort of let them go back and get all the things they missed a bit, which again is an expected form. That's why you don't worry so much about scrubbing every area clean as you first encounter it, because you know that once you've finished the story, you'll be allowed to go back and just play in the open world or bits of it. And I sort of had it. I found 1 or 2 bits there, and I thought, no, this is no good, because it's so very much about the narrative journey and the story and the cinematic adventure of it all, that when you take that whole section away, and because you've finished the story, the rest of the game just leaves you feeling, it's just Lara running around a forest looking for GPS USB sticks.
I think I actually 100%ed it.
Well, I just didn't really see the need or the motivation, because so much of the emphasis in the story, particularly the cutscenes, is Lara's doing what she's doing to survive, to get out of this situation, and it almost seemed like it undermined and demeaned that to, no, hold everything, I'm going to go and look for hidden skulls hanging from trees. Yes. It's like you're running highly counter to the urgency and the seriousness of the story that's being played out in front of you. And you can't suddenly decide to, no, stop this, I'm off to go and look for hidden widgets, because there are people's lives in danger, and it just totally diffuses and undermines the tension of it all. And so when you finish the story, success, hooray, win, end, roll in credits, that'd be the point where most people would be leaving the cinema, and instead you're suddenly going off and doing just some what suddenly becomes very abstract and pointless, find the hiddens type gameplay, So I just basically stopped it there. I thought, no, this is good. I don't want to undermine, my fond and enjoyed experiences of this by turning it into a frustrating 30-hour can't find the last thing, look it up on a website type exercise, because that'll just ruin it for me, I think. Weird. I don't know, maybe other people feel the same, or maybe it's just me, but I don't think I'm going to play it ever again, actually.
Yeah.
It highly lacks replay value, because so much of what it is a really good story. I mean, okay, yeah, certainly people watch films more than once, and I suppose in a couple of years' time I'll come back and think, yeah, that was good, I'll go through that again. But it's very much of the tightly plotted sort of story-based third-person adventure type game, which I thought we didn't really have much of these days.
No, they're still ticking along in the background.
Yeah, but I've really enjoyed those in the past. I mean, your Mass Effects and your Assassin's Creeds before they outstayed their welcome. But there's a lot of very good story stuff. Dishonored, I'm thinking, which was again a really tightly paced story adventure.
Dishonored coming out soon.
Yeah, looking forward to that. That doesn't really go in for replay value in the same sense that you'd expect from a sandbox game or something like Saints Row or GTA or whatever, because the world, I think, in these games exists to promote and drive the story. It's a very sort of linear island with particular areas where, and all the transitions between areas that you miss when you go back and do it in the sort of pick out all the hidden things afterwards mode, because a lot of them are very story-driven. There are whole sections where you're sneaking through, and there are like mad Russian sailor gunmen all over the place executing people from your ship, and you're trying to get through alive. And you can't go back and replay any of those story-driven transitions. So essentially, what you then have is a series of just little sort of valleys with foresty bits, with campsites that you teleport between. So the island itself loses its pacing and dimension. I think there's a lot of places and a lot of events you can't go back and do again and again. I mean, it does when you're going back and scouting through an open world mode, it does still spawn the occasional gunman just to keep things interesting and let you use the guns still. But having utterly destroyed hundreds of them before, and then dealt with the whole centre of the problem, you start to wonder, well, who are these guys? Were they were on lunch break when the big final showdown happened? They sort of come staggering out of their huts and think, oh, what was all that noise?
Where is everyone? Oh, well, I better just keep going.
Oh, well, I'll just keep chasing this survivor around, not really thinking that perhaps there's a reason that survivor's the only person left alive on the island. Yeah. Anyway, no, but none of that should take away or detract from the experience, and I don't think it does. It's a fantastic game, but not one for replayability. But then I don't think it's designed with that in mind. That's not what it's trying to do, and that's very good. So I would highly recommend that if like me, you hadn't actually played it. I think, no, just me then. Right.
Yeah, just you. Everyone else has played it already.
Well, you'll be pleased to hear, dear listener, that I share an opinion with most of the rest of the gaming public. I don't know, did everyone like it?
Most people, yeah.
Yeah, it is really good.
The biggest complaint was not enough tombs.
Yes, yeah. There are tombs in there, and also relics. So every so often you're sort of scrambling through this mud-slick gully, bleeding from numerous wounds, and having self-cauterized yourself with a heated arrow in a wrecked helicopter whilst escaping.
We've all been there.
Definitely cannibalistic and quite possibly rapist, murdering nut job all over the island. And every so often you'll stop to open up a box and admire a 13th century jade seahorse or something, and also the voice work as well, because it's really good. It's excellent voice work all throughout, but the sections where you're looking in this little box, obviously recorded separately and out of context, because they don't know in what situation you've opened the box. So Lara will be, a very hugely creditable performance of a terrified young woman fighting for her life by Camilla Luddington, was it? And then suddenly you break into. She does the bits where she's looking at the artifacts in quite a chirpy, upbeat, just everyday desk job archaeologist manner, and that quite confusing. But yes, the tombs themselves essentially just turn up as very limited puzzle rooms, which sort of come off of the side of the main story, and you can quite happily not do any of the tombs, and it wouldn't matter a damn to most of the game at all. You get bonus XP for doing them, and usually there's a map to all the other hiddens in the area. And some of them are straightforward. Some of them are quite frustrating, timey, jumpy puzzle type things. And I think they seem to be there just as a real sort of faint nod to the format of the original series, where essentially the entire level was a tomb, and it was generally about the treasure. I think in the first Tomb Raider game there was some sort of slight minor plot about a sinister employer.
There was quite a lot of plot.
I don't remember. All I remember is just a series of jolly adventures in desecrating graves for personal profit by a woman who quite clearly didn't need the money. So, but yeah, the tombs... Yeah, you could sort of take or leave them, really. For a Tomb Raider game, it's quite light on tomb raiding. It's like they thought, oh god, we got to have raiding tombs in there, otherwise.
Have we forgotten anything?
It's the clue's in the title. She doesn't raid any tombs. She's basically surviving a shipwreck. It's an entirely different game. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, tombs, whatever. But the rest of the game's fantastic. I would highly recommend it. But I imagine everyone already knows this. So. There we go. Over to you.
I'm going to talk about Californium.
Californium, okay.
As most people probably know, I am quite a massive dickhead. And
No, you're not a dickhead, John.
No, I'm a massive fan of Philip K. Dick and his works.
There we go. What an episode.
Yeah. This is a game basically based on his life. Effectively, or more importantly, his mental issues.
Oh wow!
It's a story of a author who has reality breaking down around him.
Yes.
So you're wandering around and you see
familiar.
these symbols, and you click on the symbols, and another reality, a sphere opens up, and you can see through to another reality. So you might see, say, a bust of somebody on a mantelpiece, and you click it, and it will turn into a balcony or something.
Okay.
And you have these TVs lying around which say how many things you've got to find in this area, and you go through and click it. And after you've found them all, the plot progresses a bit.
Okay.
Which we'll get back to in a bit. This is one of those very short, very, very, very gorgeous looking indie games.
There's a lot of those about.
There are.
Are there a lot about, or is it just you're quite unerring in your ability to find them?
Oh, I'm trying really hard to find them.
Yeah.
It makes certain things a lot easier. And it looks brilliant and plays and feels brilliant, and it's a really, really interesting little experience when you play it. The only problem is the gameplay is just trying to find these things, and after the fourth or fifth one, you're thinking, I can't be asked to find these things anymore.
So essentially, basically a kind of 3D hidden object game.
Effectively, yeah.
With a bit of talking in between.
Yeah, and at a couple of hours long, it's sort of like 2 hours long, this game, and way before the end of the game I was thinking, I am bored with this mechanic, which is impressive for a 2 hour long game.
Yeah, wow. Does that say something about your attention span or the banality of what they're asking you to do?
Yeah, there's not enough hints in the game as to where you can find these things. You'll just see the number saying, right, there's 2 left to find, and then you just have to wander around looking at stuff. You can only they were sharp when you're in a certain place looking at the right angle.
Okay.
So it becomes very hard to actually find them, and towards the end I actually...
Do you find yourself brute forcing it by just, working through the place and scanning around from one point and then the next point?
No, but I was...
Or is there some kind of clues or logic
Not
to
that
follow?
I could see, and by the end actually...
So if this is a puzzle game, then... I don't know.
It's not really a puzzle game, it's just a find thing game.
Yeah, with no clues as to where anything is.
Yeah, so by the end of it I'd actually... started up a YouTube video of somebody playing it because I couldn't be asked to find these things anymore. which is impressive for such a short game.
Well, also, it sounds like there's not a huge amount of functional difference between watching someone play the game and play the game.
No.
It seems quite minimal in the way of agency or interaction.
That's the thing. It was great and really, really interesting, but I could have just watched the video.
Yeah, just don't bother buying it, watch a YouTube playthrough of someone else do it.
Which... That ticks a box of awfulness, even for me.
Well, that moves us into the what is a game discussion. This is one of these edge cases where.
Oh, no, it's definitely a game because you're doing stuff and you're doing moving around and clicking stuff.
Maybe it's just not a very good game.
It's a brilliant idea and a brilliant execution of the atmosphere, but
A demo, perhaps.
They just didn't put enough game in there, and
you'd like them to take the idea and run with it into a proper sort of, I don't know, 20-hour thing with a lot more stuff. Maybe some more tied together
well, it
mechanics.
It doesn't need to be that. I just think even if it stays at 2 hours long, it just needed something else. It just needed to mix it up a bit.
It's an idea in search of a game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. And as you go along, you go between the paranoia about the government and working for the government, and the paranoia about that, and all the sort of things you expect from a Philip K. Dick. But which is just brilliant and perfect, and I love it for that. But then the game just lets itself down so badly.
Yeah. So it sort of sounds like a bit of a near miss.
Yeah, it could have been.
Could be a hit.
Brilliant, but. No, it isn't.
See, back in the day when someone had a game idea but didn't know what to do with it, they just tout it to Valve, and then Valve would work it into a Portal game somehow.
That's true, actually. Yes,
they really do. But Valve don't make games anymore, so you have to just do it yourself.
Yeah.
And there's your little idea with a basic framework around it, and you call it a game, I suppose. But do you think this needs a few more dimensions or aspects to the gameplay?
It just needed a bit more game mechanics. Just something else in there. Change the puzzles up, not just looking at realities and there's just something missing.
You can see what they've done there very quickly, but can you be bothered to follow it to its conclusion?
Well, the only reason I got to the end was I was so invested in hearing what was going on.
Well, that is a big driver for game progress and engagement in all sorts of games. I mean, obviously, Tomb Raider, for example, I desperately wanted to find out what happened next with the big story, which is why I was, propelling Lara through all these hideous QuickTime events and nightmarish jumpy puzzles. But yeah, the game itself was enjoyable in a way that meant that it didn't matter if there was story there or not. The story there being very good and tying everything together was important, certainly, but the gameplay as well is important. And it sounds like you're having trouble with that in here.
Yeah.
So do you recommend this? Or?
I don't think I can. It's a rare case where it's a game which I really like lots of it, but no, I just can't really recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, interesting.
Other people may have a different experience, of course. But
so you got it air on Steam. Have a look and see what the reviews are like. Is that a positive, mixed, negative? Do we care what Steam people think?
We don't care what Steam people
think. I know, but I don't know any other people. Here's a convenient opinion we can scrape.
Yes, lots of reviews saying stuff like, don't buy this and stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, well.
It's...
Clever idea.
It's a very clever idea. Very, very well executed and looks really nice, but just missing that thing.
Needs something else.
Yeah. So anyway,
okay. I'm going to talk about Star Trek Online. I've finished another soul-destroying, lack of personal free will spaceship event.
I'm deleting that game off your hard drive.
It's the Krenim Science Destroyer, which was the 6th anniversary. That's the reason they did it all this time. I'm thinking that means I get a couple of months off now before the summer thing starts up. At the same time of that, they were doing the featured episode Time and Tide, which I might have rambled about before on previous shows. I think I've got some video of it this time, so you can see some space shooting stuffs going on.
I've got vague recollections of that.
Yes, I don't know, maybe you did it.
I think I was there, wasn't I?
You were there?
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
I looked into Star Trek Online. I'm not doing that again.
By the way, how many points, how many Zen points or whatever did you have?
There was a couple of thousand.
Several million, yeah. They hate people like you, because if you all cashed your stuff in all at once, then like the Bank of England would go out of business or something.
I would cause gaming inflation.
There'd be a massive chaos of economy or something, so each week, because it's the featured episode, but what they did say, I can't work out if this is some sort of absolutely insulting further debasement of its measure of contempt of its player base, or whether it's some hugely clever and subtle and ironic time travel thing. But basically every week, this featured episode was running for 4 weeks, and there's a different reward each week for 4 weeks, so you have to do it 4 times. And I thought, is this some sort of very clever meta time travel reference?
No, it's an MMO, it's not clever.
Or is it just that they're too lazy to do featured episodes every week like they used to do back in the day? That was good.
That was good.
That was unsustainable, so they didn't do that anymore. Instead, they went back to a sort of in-game mini expansion whenever we feel like it type schedule.
I was thinking that they had one of those come out the day they went free to play. and no one played it, and I think that put them off it.
Oh.
But no one played it because they were playing the rest of the content because they'd all just come into the game and wanted to get.
That's right. It was around the same time, wasn't it?
It was actually the same week.
Yeah. So everyone's so loads of people haven't played it ever before. We're all just doing, boring normal episode
and
one.
I think they may have taken the wrong message away from that.
Well, I think because they can't have been developing one of those a week, so you had to have spent the usual 3 months to put an episode together and then build up a big stock of them or something. They tend to sort of go with free mini expansions of content like every other MMO nowadays. But yes, this featured episode thing had you travelling to the future to witness the temporal accords, because in the far future, the 29th century or something, everyone has all joined Starfleet and Federation and stuff, and it's all happy, happy, sing, sing, joy, joy, and then some giant hologram of some guy who I don't know, some guy who you were helping in an episode I haven't actually done yet, so I don't know who and what the context of all that was. Turns up and says, "No, time will be free," and starts attacking everyone. So, fortunately, you cavemen from the 24th century are there with your primitive weapons and can save the day. And then there's a bit of spaceship shooty thing. Episode notable for quite an interesting orbital ring around the planet. It's quite interesting scenery. New Kittimer or something. And then lots of these fight the Krenim, hooray, win, get some special anniversary box thing. I mean, we did it I did all 4 weeks of the thing. I don't know if the others did. There was various absences. Don't say I blame them. And I got a full set of chronometric Polaron something or other gear for the spaceship, which helps because I tend to use Polaron stuff anyway, so that was quite nice. But that's all over now. Oh yeah, I think each week if you did it on the week, so that's there as an episode to be able to replay by normal people any time of the year now, and all of the rewards are there to choose from as well. But you won't get the featured episode reward, which was a specialisation point in a box, which I got 4 of, which is good. That's basically, you get one of those every time you redo level 60, so worth having.
For various definitions
and
of worth.
I got the Krenim science vessel. I don't like it. It's ugly. I don't fly science. I don't like science ships. But there it is. So that's good. It's an extra card in the weird Admiralty Duty Officer mission game. So that's something. Well, I don't have many science ships in there, so that helps me. And at some point in the future, this is the thing. Yeah, I totally don't care about the ship almost the instant I've gained it. And I sort of just look at it and go, all right, thank God that's over, and then leave the game in a kind of psychotic rage. But 8 months down the line or a year down the line, I come back and I think, oh yeah, look, I've got this free tier 6 ship I forgot about back in the day, and that makes me just jump straight back in and carry on playing at a high level of enjoyment. So it's a sort of investment in the future, really, slogging through these token grinds.
It's almost as if they saw you coming.
I don't know. Well, they didn't really, because all this means is that I don't then go and spend $20 on an actual spaceship
That's
in
true,
6 months' time, because I've got one I put the time in for back in the day. So in a way, it's a kind of resistance, a kind of counterculture, I think.
You can keep telling yourself that.
I do. That's why I keep participating. But I still do enjoy the game. I'm working through the Delta Quadrant stuff. That's as far as I've got on any character in terms of story progression. There's a whole load of Iconian War stuff I know nothing about. And I need to learn about all that because we did some Strike Force, Task Force things the other week. I'm looking forward to Saturdays with the Star Trek group now, actually, because we can do what we want instead of the featured episode again. That should be nice. But we did one called the Herald Sphere, which has us against this race of aliens called the Heralds, which I think has something to do with the Iconians that I've not encountered in the actual story, so I don't know any of the background of. And they're insane. They're really difficult to fight. And a lot of their special abilities involve opening up wormholes to either all sorts of horrible places and then unleashing nasty stuff from inside those onto you as you're trying to fight them. They open solar wormholes, a giant wibbly black-ringed yellow red blob in the sky, which then pours out a beam of solar energy, because basically they just open wormholes into the heart of stars and then aim them at you.
That doesn't sound very safe to me.
No, it's a horrific direct damage alpha strike. They open oblivion wormholes to somewhere else that drain all your energy and your systems and stuff. They open all sorts of other nasty wormholes. They tend to sort of use them to teleport about as well, and the ships themselves are pretty hard as well. So we ended up inside this Dyson sphere fighting, and there's a big old ring of wormholes around the centre of it, and they open in different sequences, and you have to fly over and close them, but you can't do it while you're being shot at, which means somebody else has to go in and tank, and there's a ton of stuff going on. And then the boss fight at the end, which is this giant Quel'Thas super destroyer thing, giant star-shaped thing. It looks quite cool, actually. and we just couldn't kill it. And we worked out that there was just pretty much everything else was healing it. So we had to work our way through killing stuff, kill more stuff. And there was 4 of us. So when we queued, a 5th person joined from the random queues, and I don't know what they thought, but we took about 35 minutes to do what should have been an 8-minute task. But interestingly, they didn't rage quit. So I guess they must have just had trouble or had never seen this instance before. It's one of the ones that does not populate on the queues, which is usually your queue. Your clue there is that if it has average time of dash and 0 players queuing, don't join that queue, because there's probably a very good reason why no one queues for that instance. No, you stick to your Crystalline Catastrophe Advanced, and if you need Iconian marks, I guess there are 2 ways. The easiest way I found was not actually any in the Strike Force queues. If you've got the Kobali Prime ground zone in the Delta Quadrant, some of the public quests in there towards the very far end of that zone offer Iconian marks as an optional reward instead of the Delta marks, so that seemed to be the easiest way to trigger your daily bonus for those. But Brotherhood of the Sword, which is a ground mission, people love or hate the ground combat in Star Trek Online.
Usually hate.
I've come to like it. It's all right, but I've got some decent gears. That helps.
Yeah, but you're broken when it comes to this game. We've established that already.
I think you're probably right, yeah. But Brotherhood of the Sword is a ground zone where you have to shut down Iconian devices in clusters of 4, or clusters of 3, which basically means that one player needs to be stood next to each of them and you all need to hit the button at the same time. Needs a bit of coordination, which is a far cry and a rare thing in pickup grouping. And then the rest of you seem to just need to deal with waves and waves of killer robots coming in on you as you go. And you can get around there fairly quickly as long as people understand the basic mechanic. I don't know, there's quite a few of these Strike Forces we haven't tried yet. That's why we're having a go at some of these nightmarish ones. We'll probably find out why no one else uses them in due course, but still playing anyway. Yeah, still going. I'm looking forward to just having a bit of a rest from stupid you must go and do this events, because I hate myself for doing this stuff. But if I follow that to its logical conclusion, I'm not going to do what MMO devs tell me, then obviously the final position of that is don't play MMOs. And I'm not sure I'm ready to make that leap yet, because I've got nothing else in my vacuum of a life to fill it with. So I tend to just go along with what the MMO devs want me to do. They ring the bell, I salivate. It's wretched, really, isn't it? But there you go. I can't think of a better way to pass my time. Why don't you talk about something optimistic and upbeat quickly, please?
I'm going to continue that conversation by talking about.
Do you not get that? You're a bit more robust and resilient to all this than me, but I see a featured episode or a hey, do this quest for some bonus imaginary points or rep or whatever, and I go, all right, and then I totally forfeit any ideas of my own about what I might like to do in the game, and that's precisely it's absolutely a psychological thing. And the more lavish MMOs, your World of Warcrafts and your Old Republics and whatever, they spend a lot of time and money on psychologists and people who understand how to drive herd psychology to actually incentivize and drive this stuff, particularly the ones that do well in the cash shops, because they've got people, sinister, evil mind wizards who understand how to trick credulous fools like me into parting with money and doing what they tell me. It's about control.
I have exactly the opposite reaction. When I see an event, I just don't do it.
Well, that's the sensible way, because it just takes a little bit of interest. Next thing you know, you're just a mindless automaton stamping out bottle caps in a factory run by some sinister overlord that probably isn't even from this planet anyway. Breath.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the Old Republic.
Okay.
Because, that is a game that I've been playing.
I've been playing that game with you.
I know, yes.
But you can talk, yes.
Yes. We've been playing that with various people doing a trooper-only group.
Concept group.
Yeah.
I love concept groups.
Is the best way to break a game.
Well, in a way, because but this is the thing. In that and almost every other MMO, the received wisdom and the design goals and the sinister psychology drive you to build composite groups of different skills that interlock to make more than the sum of the parts. So when you all decide to roll as clerics, that tends to screw with the game quite badly, and I love doing that. I love trying that. We had a cleric only group, static group in EverQuest 2 for a very long time, and that did amazingly well.
Well, we have completely broken Old Republic by doing this. Well, there's two things. One, they have completely and utterly broken Old Republic.
I think they've broken it, yeah.
It is a utterly destroyed game at the moment, because you can't get through the content without out leveling it and then being bumped back down. The levels in this game now are utterly irrelevant.
So, this is the 12 times experience bonus you get for doing story missions, which previously was a special super duper pre-order perk that they monetized and sold. And I think whenever that offer went away, the population numbers must have dropped through the floor or something, because now they've made it a standard thing for everyone. If you're doing your class missions or your planet missions, shown by the purple triangles above head instead of the yellow ones, you'll get 12 times as much XP.
Okay, we are levels 40 to 50.
Yeah.
We just been doing Taris. What level band is Taris?
I don't know, 18 to 22,
exactly.
Something like that. Yeah.
It is utterly broken, the levelling.
Well, they've tried to fix it by then forcing your level down to match the surroundings whenever you're out in an open world area or whatever, but that never works. I mean, I'm a big fan of mentoring systems and so on, because it lets friends play together regardless of time commitment, but almost invariably they don't quite do the sums for that correctly. They'll do the basic things like hit points, they'll times by whatever, they'll halve your hit points if you need to drop to half the level, but things like alternate advancement perks, or any kind of specialization stuff, things where you get to put extra points in, or the gear tends not to be scaled down that accurately either. You're almost always overpowered when you're scaled down.
We're just steamrolling all the content, and that does not make for a fun game.
It is a bit of a trivial face roll. I mean, I thought I was going to be in this particular run for the story of it all, but that's turning out to be pretty
turns out
rubbish. Their fourth pillar is not there, really.
Without being too condescending, MMO players do not have high standards if this is the high point of storytelling in games for MMOs.
Oh, well.
It is utterly derivative drivel. It is appallingly badly written and badly acted, and embarrassingly so.
Yeah, I suppose, but...
It is dire.
I'm not sure if I feel compelled to defend it, but I should point out that you or I are in our 40s and aficionados of Hugo-winning science fiction and all the rest of it. So I'm wondering...
I've been reading crappy Star Wars novels. They are better than this.
Oh, wow. Well, okay, I concede that one then.
It is just appalling.
Also,
compare it to, say, Tomb Raider, like you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Which actually has a halfway decent story.
Yeah.
This is just so... it makes me so angrily. It's so bad. It's awful.
I mean, I've heard it said that the Trooper story in particular isn't hugely interesting, and that things like the Imperial Agent is generally held up as one of the best stories, but I can't imagine it's, quantum leaps ahead.
I rolled an Imperial Agent and started going through it, and no, it is still awful. It's so predictably bollocks.
Well, I just wonder then, who's saying that the story is great? Are these the people whose opinion on story we should be trusting?
The problem is people's expectations on MMOs are so screwed up. They look at anything. It's like The Division. People are saying The Division's got great shooting. It does not. It has awful shooting. It is so bollocksly average.
I suppose there's a question of, to the starving man, bread and water tastes divine, Is it just that we're so used to not having any meaningful narrative or story in gaming at all, that when stuff like this shows up, we think, my God, it's Victor Hugo.
Yeah, it's people... Just, it is better than everything else, but that doesn't mean that it's
That just says we have a very low bar, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just the fact that MMOs... as a whole, have just been so awful when it comes to this. There's something that even raises its head above the parapet slightly, looks good to
well, mostly in the olden days, back to the 90s and 2000s, is the olden days, the story was typically something that was related through live events and patching. So the world, the state of the world and the big players, the pantheon of gods and the big NPC heroes of every place, they would do their things probably, off stage, and then the consequences would show up as a next patch or a new zone or whatever. And that's how it would be done. But that was never a personal story. You were always one. If you were lucky, you were a participant among thousands, and mostly you were just a spectator. But nowadays, MMOs, in an attempt to compete with single player gaming and an attempt to remain relevant there, are compelled to try and drive a story in terms of personal, in terms of this is you and you're special, and that, as almost anyone can see almost immediately, is just impossible and untenable, because you are not the only hero. You're one of thousands, and how can that possibly then drive a narrative about you. And I think BioWare have had a good old go at it, but it can only really be in very generic terms and hidden away in little instances and not change the actual world at all.
It says BioWare on the tin, but this was their B team. This is not the Mass Effects of this world. You just have to compare it to Mass Effect. That's what they can do. And okay, Mass Effect is pulpy sci-fi, well-written pulpy sci-fi.
Yeah, it sort of lost its way with 3 a bit. I think, but 2 was fantastic. Yeah. I really enjoyed the story.
That's because 2 is always the best in any game series.
Yeah, I suppose. And also I wonder how much... So who's saying that this is the big story game and the fourth pillar is important? Is it
them?
Is it BioWare?
Yeah, it was BioWare. And everyone bought into the bollocks.
Have we gone native? Are we just buying their propaganda then?
Well, no, okay. The entire games media is all about that, of course. Without wanting to get too conspiracy.
Wow.
But it's always, this is what we're going to tell you. This is the story. This becomes the narrative. And it just goes from there.
But see, this is the problem because essentially this is the USP. This is why I thought the Old Republic would be a good one for a static group, is because we got this new angle, this story thing, and it's turning out not really to be delivering that well.
No, not at all.
I don't know if I should admit all this, really. I mean, to begin with, I was quite cross with you guys because you kept talking over all the cutscenes, but now I just don't care, and I'm talking over the cutscenes that I'm watching as well because I've just sort of lost interest in it a bit.
People who aren't playing the games are talking over the cutscenes, and we don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I was originally I started sort of experimented to begin with just like muting everyone so I could hear it all, or telling you to shut up. But now I just don't care. Yeah, whatever, because I've just not really clicked or engaged with the story. It's a character and it's odd. It's odd because essentially it's a character I've designed and I've created, and I don't care about their story at all either. The problem with the big fourth pillar and the big story-driven narrative of MMOs, it takes a lot of decisions and choice, and I don't know if the term role-playing is precisely what I mean, but you have certain ideas about what your character is like, even if you never then go out and RP in yonder local tavernery with other like-minded, verily forsooth souls. At least you're playing your character with some idea of what they're thinking, what they're like, and even if that never becomes an objective exterior thing, that character is yours. And what happens in here is in the traditional BioWare manner is that your character is expressing themselves quite fluently with full voice acting. Jennifer Hale in my case.
It's always Jennifer Hale in your case.
And you're being presented with the big, massive polar moral dilemmas. They must have a klaxon on the edge of the screen just to point out when you've got up, because you got the massive light side and dark side symbols, and it's disappointing in a way because you're expressing yourselves. You're expressing yourself in a whole series of words you're not saying, and at the end you get to choose between saying, yes, I'm going to burn down the orphanage, or no, I would like to save the kittens. It's absolutely the BioWare red-blue morality meter, but it's in full force.
Yeah, it's even worse than usual.
Well, no, because I thought they'd learned not to do that in Mass Effect, where they've experimented and dabbled with the idea of order and chaos instead of good and evil,
which
with
really
the Paragon and Renegade.
And who doesn't love that moment you kick the guy out through the window?
Yeah, but you can play as full Renegade, and it doesn't explicitly then make you the Emperor of the galaxy with the lightning coming out of your hands at the end.
That's the problem with Star Wars, isn't it? You always got to have the light and dark, and it is very, very cartoonish.
Part of Star Wars, I suppose, is very much that. I mean, just thinking back to my formative years and the media I was consuming, films, books, television, games and stuff, Star Wars was always probably one of the most stark and abstracted good versus evil stories out there. Pretty much everything else I encountered at least attempted to explore the ambiguity, the idea of power corrupting the righteous, that kind of thing. But Star Wars is just, no, you're either good or you're evil, and here's a massive knife switch, and that's just not interesting.
No, it isn't. Narratively, it is boring.
Yeah, everyone's you draw a big line in the middle, and everyone stands one side of it or the other, and then they fight, and good always wins. Okay, whatever.
And even when you do get this moral system,
in a way, I suppose BioWare should be commended for maintaining the spirit of Star Wars, in such an accurate manner. But then Star Wars isn't very interesting for me either.
No. We're playing with Matt from MMO Musketeers, and he's been taking the dark side choices. Well, yes. I think we've all been taking the light side choices, and he's still neutral. We've been playing for weeks. He's been doing evil thing after evil thing, and it hasn't actually affected him.
Well, also, I'm just picking the obviously flagged light side choice when actually I disagree with it personally. Yeah. There are a lot of pragmatic choices. The Trooper tries to be this. So the story is essentially is that you're a new recruit in this elite squad of Republic troopers who almost all immediately defect to the
I've never
Empire.
heard that story before. That is an interesting and exciting news story that's never been told
before. And then,
before.
remarkably, High Command allow you to just go about your business without any suspicion whatsoever.
Yeah, and go track them all down.
To be honest, if I were in charge, the remaining guy who didn't defect, I'd just shove straight in the brig and not take my eyes off ever again. But yes, so you have to build a new squad and find lots of people to help you, and then you go and track out the rest of them down one at a time on a variety of planets. And so far so samey and mediocre, but all the way through you're being presented with these different choices, which if when looked at through the lens of a contemporary military officer in a real life situation, there'd be all sorts of things in there that you would not do because they're just stupid.
Yeah.
Good is dumb, and that is very much the Star Wars way. There's a lot of there are a lot of harsh things that, if this were Mass Effect, there'd be a whole load of really quite brutal choices in there that you would need to take to maintain the operational integrity of whatever you're doing.
The Clone Wars cartoon was more adult and intelligent about this subject matter than this game is.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a cartoon for kids.
It almost never. It explores the idea that good people sometimes need to do bad things for the greater good, but it almost always flags those up as a dark side choice.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to play as essentially a Republic trooper who's on the light side, I mean, okay, yes, you can do it does support playing against type. You can be a light side Empire person who with a heart of gold, or you can be a ruthless bastard on the Republic side. But those never really sit very well because the whole rest of the setting and universe is expecting you to play to type. I mean, a dark side trooper is essentially Commander Shepard on Renegade mode.
Yeah.
And that doesn't fit with the light, the very clear cut morality that Star Wars always is. Anyway, story banging on about that a lot. What about the gameplay then? Surely that's a redeeming feature. Surely we can ignore this plot and just play it for
no, because the game is so utterly broken. I spend quite a lot of time just chasing around after the group, not being able to get to fights before they're over.
I'm sorry, I'm partly to blame for that. I have an enormous aggro radius. Yeah, if I were a mob, I'd be attacking people who just zoned in from the other side.
The problem is, you're attacking everyone to be on top of you. We all have area of effect weapons, and we don't really need half the team.
Well, I mean, the Trooper Comedy Guild is one that does, the Concept Guild does work because you can specialise within Trooper to be DPS, tank or healers.
Yeah.
So we are sort of doing the Trinity properly.
We got the DPS.
But that Trinity gameplay is massively overpowering the solo overworld content by orders of magnitude. I heard everything in, and then 3 people hit the grenade mortar volley button, and then just everything blows up and dies. So, yeah.
And then when we did go into
dungeons,
we did some of the harder content.
Dungeons are designed
for
groups.
Harder.
Well, yeah. I mean,
massive warnings going into these. Oh, this is really hard. We're going to die. This is the death corridor.
Yeah.
Around this corner is death.
Mandalorian Raiders. I did that
all the way through.
I had to go at that as a Sith Juggernaut tanking in a proper group back in the day when we were first doing static groups through there, and it was quite hard. And I don't want to point fingers at particular players because that's about the only difference I can see between the two attempts. No, I think the game has gotten a lot easier since then. I think it's it's more to do with inexpertly applied scaling than any kind of content change.
Oh yeah, it is. Also, what was the one we did this week?
The one with Coloroidal Warzone or something? Colorazone?
Which has some of the most dullest gameplay I've ever seen in a game.
So the story was that there's a bunch of insect weapon makers. Essentially, it's the Geonosians from the early prequel film thing.
So is, including the arena at the end with exactly those 3 animals.
The pillars and stuff.
Of course there are.
Yeah. But basically, there's a race of neutral alien weaponsmiths, and teams of Sith and Jedis have to go along and compete for the honour to be sold weapons. I mean, that's no way to run a defence industry, to be honest. But so we had to go in.
It should be massive bribes. Like
so
now.
we went in and shot up a load of stuff and fired some guns and did a big switch force field gate puzzle thing, and then a big arena fight with some monsters that died almost instantly. In order so that the Republic were given the weapons contract. I don't know. It was a bit weird.
And
it wasn't BAE Systems, so I don't to say that.
There's whole sections where you're just sitting there on a gun turret.
Yes.
You don't fire. You just point it at stuff and they fall over. And who thought that was anything good? It was embarrassingly crap.
So in an attempt to spice things up and introduce some new mechanics to the normal MMO dungeon romp, they decided to have 4 of us sat on each on a sort of mounted turret thing. and you incoming waves of like bug creatures. Only there wasn't even a button to fire the gun.
It was just
you literally pointed at the enemy and it would fire at them.
What idiot thought that was good? Who sat down in the meeting and said, we could do this. The players will love this.
So we spent 20 minutes looking at monsters. And we looked at monsters successfully and then they made us do it again.
Yeah. So, all the time, everyone getting a bit more sarcastic.
That was the best part, yeah. The increasing sarcasm.
The group is the best thing about it. The game does not carry itself.
This is the thing. This is what it ultimately all boils down to. If I could have as much fun with those these four people just sat there chatting and all watching different films on Netflix or something, then your game is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Literally, we could be playing any MMO at all and we'd be having as good a time because we're friends who like chatting.
Yeah.
So
let's not restrict this to MMOs because I think we're discovering here that MMOs are the problem.
Well, yeah, but then I suppose what you want from an MMO in that situation then is one that's not so interesting that you've got to concentrate or listen or pay attention because you're busy chatting with your friends anyway. So perhaps these MMOs perform the function they're designed to do perfectly.
No,
which is not be so interesting that you can't concentrate on chatting with your friends.
They're designed to eat up time and just fill time, and that's all it is.
They sell gems.
Yeah. Nobody has put any effort into making any MMO be an interesting game for a hell of a long time.
Well, interesting
MMOs died with Galaxies.
MMOs are interesting is the subjective word there, isn't it? Different people find different things interesting. Perhaps folks that love this stuff and are totally focused, and maybe you're just too highly trained.
Yeah. I've got a feeling that looking at your obsessions with Star Trek Online, all MMOs do now is they concentrate on people who want to do rigid, repeatable tasks.
Well, that's because
they would want to hook onto that
MMOs.
pattern.
So World of Warcraft got lucky, or basically World of Warcraft managed to get the right blend of compulsive repetition and ease of access that EverQuest originally didn't. Basically, the reason World of Warcraft was so successful is because it took the group requirement out of EverQuest.
Yeah.
EverQuest was quite a solid format to begin with, but you had to have a whole load of friends and you had to work together to get anything done, and that put a lot of people off, especially when you're talking about strangers on the internet. Anyway, ever since World of Warcraft, everyone's been desperately trying to grow their MMOs by gaining new players, and that is a science that is not understood.
No.
It's like most advertising. Isn't it? They say 50% of all advertising is wasted money, but no one knows which 50%. Essentially the idea being that we do stuff and there's some things happen.
And if we don't do stuff, then it doesn't happen.
But
something is working.
But we can't refine it any further than that. And that's very much where MMOs are. I don't think anyone designing an MMO knows precisely how to attract large numbers of new players. So, but you do know what your existing players like and what they do and how they use your game. So, makes sense to keep selling to the people who have already paid you money. So, which is why most MMOs are quite conservative affairs that will just keep putting out more of the same because they're afraid to mess with the formula in case they drive away the people who already pay them.
And that's the problem, because they're never going to move beyond that. And that just leads to this lockbox nonsense which we have now, which just trying to monetize everything and everyone copying everyone else's features, which is why I haven't found MMOs interesting for a hell of a long time, and I don't think I'm going to until they get around to
just completely making
things.
Numbers up out of my head. If you introduce a new feature, there's let's call it a 50% chance it's a huge success and gets you some new players, or 50% chance it's a massive failure and drives loads of people away. Who wants to take that risk? Who's going to do a 50-50 gamble? No. So you design your MMO to essentially be like all the others. Well, perhaps you'd change some of you fiddle around with the little tinkly bits, like for example, hey, check out our revolutionary industry breaking new feature. You can just walk over the corpse to loot it instead of actually right clicking it. That would be the kind of magnitude of revolutionary gameplay change that we see in the MMO industry.
I don't see that ever changing.
It'll be a slow evolution, but whether the market and the persistence will be there to let that evolution happen, I don't know.
Yeah. So,
anyway, the old public.
I'm basically deciding I probably should not be playing MMOs ever again, because they really... everything about them annoys me now. Every single thing about them. It's just a cynical marketing
from the outside
exercise.
Looking in, I suggest that you stop.
Yeah.
Obviously. I mean, for me, it's a more subtle thing built on compulsion and obsession and habit. But
well, see, that's the other thing. I made a conscious choice a couple of weeks ago to not, as my default, fill time by playing games. So I would try and do something else rather than play a game, because I realised I was just getting in from work.
It's certainly a way to get more things done, yeah.
I was getting in from work, playing games all evening and just getting nothing done.
Yeah.
And that has One of the reasons why I've been playing all these small indie games is they're just a nice thing I could fit in on an evening, and I know it's not going to suck me in for hundreds of hours, and that is perfect. That's exactly what I want.
Perhaps we need to adjust our expectations then. Typically when you say, this game is only 2 hours long, we go, that's terrible. That's a massive waste. That's a massive rip-off, We expect 40 hours, 100 hours. Yeah. MMOs take thousands.
When a game says it's 100 hours long, that is not a selling point for me. That is a reason for me not to buy it. I mean, I made a massive exception with The Witcher recently, but that's because it was so good. But if any other game, like a JRPG, any JRPG releases, I'm not touching it now. Why? Because I don't want to dedicate that much of my life to one thing.
I stood outside game the other day in a town high street, and I thought, I don't need any more games. The games I've got now will last me for another 5, 10, 15 years before I've squeezed every drop of activity out of them. And that's mostly because they are MMOs which are designed not to end. They're designed just to keep grinding them over. So that's terrible. I mean, I should probably finish the games I've got, certainly, but also I should think about buying shorter games, because then I could get more done or more in, or just not play so many games. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm doing stuff like okay, I'm completely wasting my time by now writing a game, which, bad move.
That's a different thing, though.
But yeah, that's just an excuse to write music, do art, and do other stuff that I don't normally do. And there's also that annoying coding thing, but I do that all the time anyway. Reading more books, watching a bit more TV, which is bizarre. When you turn around and say, I'm going to watch a bit more TV, that is a weird thing to say.
Yeah. There's a reason feature films are 2 hours long and not 30. Yeah.
So I've not completed the game in ages now, and
I don't know. I find myself more and more interested and compelled by survival sandbox type stuff. Your Minecraft, Space Engineers, all that sort of thing. Just the idea of pottering within a framework rather than here is the game, play it for 200 hours. I mean, a game of Minecraft can last as long as or as short as you like, really. But you divide that into smaller activities, and that's pseudo creative. I'm not saying doing Minecraft is greatly enhancing the general human race or anything, but
it is. We're doing videos on it. Minecraft's my exception at the moment, because I've been really enjoying that. But I know that that's just an evening a week, and a very defined, we need to record X number of episodes in that evening.
Well, also, you divide your Minecraft up into smaller little projects.
Yeah.
The gameplay within Minecraft itself can be quite varied and interesting.
I don't mind how many hundreds of hours that's going to take.
100 hours spent building a massive city full of working machinery in Minecraft is probably more worthwhile than 100 hours spent grinding out Starship tokens in Star Trek Online. I don't know.
I can get to max level in an MMO, and what have I actually achieved? What have I got? I'm at max level. Max level's going to move in that patch anyway.
Yeah. All these tokens you're grinding this equipment for. Well, this is the transitory nature of it all as well. You've got very rarely got anything to show for it at the end that's physical, because, turn server off and it's gone. So you have to assume that you've got fantastic memories and experiences to show for it all. And if you don't have those, then really, what is the point?
Yeah, it basically comes to the point where just logging onto Mumble is better than logging onto Mumble and going into the game, which is worrying. And I do feel a little awkward with that.
What, spectating?
Yeah, being the person who isn't in the game, it just feels like weird.
No, we don't mind.
I don't know what minds, but it feels weird.
Oh.
Yeah. So Old Republic, bunch of arse.
Yeah.
7 out of 10.
From my perspective, I had great hopes for the story, which are not being fulfilled, and I probably should have known better. And in terms of just a basic game, it's serviceable. It's World of Warcraft with laser swords. There's not a huge amount to differentiate it from anything else.
Well, that's the thing. I don't see why we need so many games.
I wonder why. Yeah, I wonder why we need so many of these. Could all just go and play World of Warcraft, or not. World of Warcraft and a load of other stuff that's quantitatively and qualitatively different. I don't know.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft and Minecraft, and then we don't need any other games.
To our remaining listener.
Yes. Wow, look at that. Look at that timer. I was going to talk about Rift a lot, but I shall probably say that for another time.
Yeah, we should probably say that. That's just going to be another rant.
If I get the mini rant out of the way, then perhaps I can be optimistic. This week's adventures in the Rift Cash shop, actually last week's because we missed a week, but they are now selling artifacts for gems. So artifacts is your glowing sparklies, and they're all around the world, and you right-click one and pick it up, and it turns out to be an object. And these objects come in little collections of 5 or 6 or 15 or 200 or whatever, and if you get all the set, then you get a token, and the tokens add up to various things you can buy: cosmetic mounts, cash shops, etc., and titles. And it's just the hidden thing in the world mechanic, but you need the whole set to cash in, and if you can't find that last item in the set, you can now just buy it from the from the gem store. They got a button which says draw, and you push that button and it will randomly give you one of the remaining items in your set. So if you've got, like, all 5 of them are missing, you've got a 1 in 5 chance of it being any particular one. If you've only got 1 left, it will always be that one.
That sounds fair.
It sounds fair enough. Well, but the price in gems goes up the more you're missing. So I know, yeah. So if you've only got 1 left, you would pay about 250 gems, I suppose, which is essentially $2.50. They're about 1 cent a go, I think. If you've got like a set of 6 and you haven't got any of them, you push the button and it will cost you about 4,000 gems, which is about $40. And we worked out there was one particular set we were looking at where there was that we were missing a thing. We worked out that to get the first item in the set, if you didn't have any of them, you would have had to have basically shelled out for the the 80 quid pack of gems to have enough gems to do the dice roll to get the first one.
Yeah.
Insane. Absolute insanity.
It's a game in trouble.
It's a game in trouble. It's a company in trouble.
Yeah, it's a company in serious trouble.
I think Archage didn't do very well for them.
Yeah.
I think there was a huge backlash to that. Not a lot of people liking it. And they've got this Atlas Reactor thing on their launcher, which is like a new open access thing, and I'm not even sure what that is. Some sort of squad-based MOBA tactical shooter type thing. Don't know. Anyway, so Rift still a thing for how much
Just.
longer? But yes, I don't even want to talk about this week's session because I was in a weird mood. So anyway, yes, I don't know what to say except I'm just very sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think...
Do your spiel.
I think that the real life needs to happen now and not games. So you can join us next week when we'll be talking about more stuff. You can go along to YouTube where you can watch our lovely Minecraft videos.
Wow. Enjoying that.
Some fantastic incompetence.
Yes.
The videos went up when I accidentally built the nether portal in the wrong place.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
It's a complicated rerouting exercise, and we could never use that VAT again.
You can also go along to howtomurdertime.com where you can find all our previous episodes and lots of stuff. And people keep downloading all the original Van Hemlock episodes.
Those are the days. Back when I was young and fresh-faced and enjoyed the genre.
I forgot to say, this week, 8-year anniversary of the first episode.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah. I
was there as thank
Yeah, I didn't expect this to last that long. So there you go.
There you go. Proof that sometimes the thing is easier to do than to not do.
Yeah, and thank you for sticking with us if you've been around from the beginning, which
Yay.
I know that a lot of you have. Yes, and also if you like our stuff, then please like it and subscribe and give us a review on iTunes or whatever it is that people do nowadays. Because, well, why
I don't
not?
understand media.
No, I don't either. Probably the wrong people to be doing this, aren't we? So we'll see you next week with more of the same.
Ta-ta.